The Big E Sports Show.
Yeah, we got it going on,
The fastest hour in sports entertainment. We don't just talk about the headlines. We bring you some of the most engaging and colorful guests each and every episode for your listening pleasure. Now, without further ado, here's your host, Elissa Walker Campbell.
Hey, it is countdown to kickoff as we prepare for Super Bowl 60. Welcome in to the Big E Sports Show. I'm your host, Elissa Walker Campbell, and joining me now is Jen Mueller. She is a longtime sideline reporter for the Seattle Seahawks, and we are looking forward to her unmatched insight into the Seahawks' journey, their mindset, and what makes this team built for this moment. Jen, first time on the show, thank you so much for carving out some time.
Yeah, I'm excited for the conversation.
Well, we're thrilled to have you on, and I have to give a little shout out. You're a native Texan. You grew up here in the Houston area, right?
I did. I went to Concordia Lutheran out in Tomball.
Oh,
My
yeah.
parents live in the area. My brother, sister-in-law, niece, and nephew are there, which is really confusing when they wear Seahawks gear to school. But Auntie Jen's got to keep it covered.
And as I understand, we were talking earlier, you have been, covering the Seahawks. This is going to be your third Super Bowl. You've been covering the Seahawks for 17 years, right?
Yeah, it has been an evolution to watch this happen with Pete Carroll for 14 years, to see what Mike Macdonald has done in the last 2 years, and to watch all of the personalities and the players from our past Super Bowl teams come back and support this year's team. It has been pretty cool to experience that entire ride.
Jen, you talk about the Legion of Boom. How does this defense compare to that amazing team and group of men?
So I would say the intensity with which they play and kind of the preparation and overall feel of the locker room is very similar. Like, you knew that the Legion of Boom, much like this 2025 Seahawks defense, was going out there to, kind of just tear your face off, right? They were going to give you a fight. You weren't going to come out of that matchup, without being bloodied and beaten and bruised to some degree. But there are some differences personality-wise. So Richard Sherman was on the sideline before the NFC Championship game, and he and Doug Baldwin actually turned to me and started up the conversation and said, this team is a little bit different. They don't talk as much as we do.
Oh.
Do they? I was like, no, actually, that Legion of Boom team had a lot of large personalities, all of which seemed to have a chip on their shoulder. And so it just fueled them in a different way. This current team, while it is very young, has veterans like DeMarcus Lawrence, Julian Love, Leo Williams, who understand, after being in the league a long time, what it means to be there. And they just lead with a slightly different demeanor. I would also say, schematically wise, this is a different team than the Legion of Boom, right? It's different in that it's built from up front. This scheme does not work if you don't have those two tackles in the middle of the defensive line. They play a different kind of back end scheme, and Nick Manwari makes it all work because you can have different groupings without actually changing the personnel on the field. So the scheme is different. The intensity is the same. The personalities are fun.
Seattle Seahawks sideline reporter Jen Mueller, our very special guest on the Big E Sports Show. And it is so interesting as you talk about this team right here, right now, has a different vibe. They have a different personality and persona. So when we think back to the start of the season, could you have imagined that the Seahawks would be one of two teams still standing?
I would not have predicted one of two teams that were left. I was predicting more success than I think the national pundits and experts. And part of that is understanding how it felt at the end of last year and understanding how it felt in training camp and knowing how close it felt. You made a second half run last year and you were right there at the doorstep of being in the playoffs. And when you got 10 wins with a first-year coach, you knew that you were moving in the right direction. Once you saw how these guys acted outside of their own position groups, so linebackers talking to offensive linemen, once you saw Gray Zabel, the rookie left guard, spending so much time with Leonard Williams, you started to realize that this was a special team in a few different ways. And the addition of DeMarcus Lawrence, even back in training camp, they call him Crash Out. Mike Macdonald has said he is the best drill player he has ever seen. There was just a different level of intensity and intentionality where you knew that they were on the doorstep of something special. You also knew they had to get through the division.
Yeah.
But they have been building towards this. You could see this building, at least if you were in Seattle, for most of the year.
Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the Seahawks reinvented their identity more than once this season. So with that being said, I mean, what version of Seattle do you think shows up at the Super Bowl?
You're getting the very best version. And I would say that because it has taken, I won't say all year, but you have the benefit of a full year in Clint Kubiak's offensive system. You could tell the defense clicked right about the midway point. You know, you're a year and a half into Mike Macdonald's scheme. The newcomers aren't so new anymore. They understand the why behind the defense. So they started hitting on all cylinders several weeks ago. You could start to see the offense getting to that same point in the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season. And I think that that's really important because it does take time to understand a new coach, a new scheme, you know, all of these things. And while they were fine and they were winning games early, you are seeing the very best version, not to mention a special teams unit that is one of the best in the league. And I think that phase goes under, you know, represented and it's unnoticed a lot. Right up until you make some of those big plays with a Rashid Shaheed and some of those other big special teams names.
Well, a guy that we kind of feel like is underappreciated is Sam Darnold. Is that a true statement?
Yeah. Yes, I think so. You know, I think it's really interesting. I still bump into people who were, let's say, Jets fans or were from New York and say, man, I just don't trust Sam Darnold because I remember him in New York. And it's like, hold on a second here. That was a very different version. And as Mike Macdonald says, players are allowed to get better. And so if you just watch how Sam Darnold has gotten better at football, he has always had the right mentality, the right personality, the right resiliency, but he's making better choices with the football. And we have seen that throughout the year to the point where you needed Sam Darnold to play his best game against the Rams. And he did. He didn't turn the ball over, which is something that he has done quite often against the Rams in his career. And I think it's because he is so understated just in his press conferences, just with his personality. You overlook the impact that he has had. He has helped to bring this team together behind the scenes. He is executing at a really high level. And yes, he is allowed to get better as a football player.
And as a result, you got to believe that he has earned his way into a significant contract extension in the offseason.
Yeah, I would think so. And I know that those conversations, they're taking place behind the scenes to some degree. You know, John Schneider does not leave guys hanging. I'm not sure where they're going to go with that, but the numbers all suggest that he is in line for a big contract, and he has proven what he needed to prove to do that. We'll see what the Seahawks do, but, you know, it is fun to think about him in the future operating this offense with some of these talented pieces.
What do you appreciate the most about him as a quarterback?
That he is the same all the time and that he is very approachable by everybody in the locker room. He's just a dude. You know, he's the quarterback. Everything is on his shoulders, right? And if you kind of go by the narrative and just the position, but everybody talks to him. He's just a good-natured dude with kind of a dry sense of humor, and he understands the responsibility, and he's friends with, you know, kind of everybody in there. And that is not always the case in a locker room, but when it is, it creates really special leadership and teamwork.
Seahawks Island reporter Jen Mueller, our very special guest on the Big E Sports Show, also founder of her website, talksportytome.com. Check it out, talksportytome.com. What will our listeners, our viewers, what will they find when they go there, Jen?
Well, you are going to find various conversation strategies and a way to leverage sports conversations outside of just talking about stats and scores. There's a lot more that goes into how you use your fandom in business. I give keynotes on that. I have a cooking show called I Cook, You Measure. And nice. Now, if you are a Seahawks fan, you are going to want to go back and find some of those episodes with former Seahawks, with Seahawks legends. They're in my kitchen. And while they are really good on the football field, they are not so good in the kitchen. So
outstanding.
Very fun, funny stories.
Okay. My final question for you is that just your expectations on how you see this game playing out and perhaps how physical of a game do you think this will be?
The Seahawks only traveling right down the West Coast. I think that does make a difference in how you acclimate the familiarity with the stadium. You know, you've already played in Santa Clara. You just played there a few weeks ago. And I think all of that routine plays into game day, in addition to the fact that there's going to be a lot of 12s in the Bay Area. It's too close for them not to be there. So the environment is going to help with that familiarity, but it is going to be physical up front. And I am not sure that, well, I know that Drake May has some good defenses. Here's what they have not seen in conjunction with those great defenses is a top 10 offense, right? So there's no let up. When Mike McDonald says complimentary football, there is no let up on the field. If the defense can force a 3 and out, the offense is going to go and score, and you're going to be behind the 8 ball. So I do think the defense is going to dictate terms on this one. And I'm really hopeful that we can put to bed the highlight of the last time we played the Patriots in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And create a different narrative and storyline next week.
Great stuff, Jen. We're getting you ready for the championship matchup, NFL's biggest stage. We look forward to the Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots. Our very special guest has been Jen Mueller. She is the sideline reporter. Check out her website, talksportytome.com. Outstanding, Jen. We look forward to another conversation real soon. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
You bet. Take care.